Mm-hmm. Um, X Factor was the first Iron Maiden album not to be produced by Martin Birch for many, many years. The band knew it. Steve Harris knew it beforehand. How was Steve Harris as a producer of the album?
But
Because he had no previous experience.
I was hoping to work with Martin Birch. And the truth of the situation, which you wouldn't know on the outside, is that Steve was always in the control room. He was always, if you watch Visions of the Beast, or you watch the Iron Maiden documentary about the first demos that they did, Steve has always been razor sharp on the music. Every single detail is important, the mixing, the mastering, every little thing. So he never left anything to chance. Martin Birch is credited as the Iron Maiden producer, and Steve Harris learned a lot from him. But in those later albums, Steve Harris was alongside Martin Birch all the way. So it would appear he doesn't have experience, but he's made all of these albums, he's wrote these songs, he's learnt all of this, and it was a time when he felt, right, I think the time is now, I'm ready to try and produce my own album. And I've taken that as a lesson in my own life, because when you work with a producer, they still add a little bit of their own color to your picture. And when you are the producer, no one can add anything that you are. It's you, and you can get it. If you have the experience and the skills, and you're with good people, you can get it the way that you feel the listener should hear it. And that's why he did it, you know. So I've done that with my albums. I've learned a lot, and War Within Me, I've produced myself with Chris Appleton, taking different roles, different parts of the production. And that comes from being with Maiden on the X Factor and learning from Steve. He knew what he wanted to hear. He had ideas, right? Maybe it should go like this. And a lot of producers have that. The other side of that is an area of my voice that I never used before in recording or performing, but perhaps just with my warming up. He found that, he used it, and he put it into the songs. And so my voice is bigger and darker and more soulful on the X Factor than it ever had been before.
Mm-hmm. Took the best out of you. And this whole procedure took more than a year to be completed. And of course, as a new guy in the band, you were more than anxious for the album to be released. How did you see that delay? Did it have to do with your motorcycle accident?
No, I think it was a time of upheaval in the music business. When I joined Iron Maiden, EMI sold every factory they had. Unbelievable. The biggest music company in the world, with plants in every country and all of that. They sold everything because they obviously thought everything was going to go digital, and CDs and vinyl would be dead. And that was the thing. It was a huge uncertainty in the industry at the start of the X Factor, with Napster, Metallica's case against them, all of this. I think it weighed heavily on everybody at that time. So the delay, we didn't spend 365 days of a year working on the album. We got together, we wrote a bit more, we'd have some rehearsal, we do a bit of record with, and it would be like that, and the whole thing slowly came together. Horrendous technical difficulties on the X Factor as well.
Like?
Well, there are, in those days, it's before hard drives are
And Pro Tools and all that stuff.
big enough to use for music. It's just before there was digital tape, and it's 2 Mitsubishi 32-track digital tape machines. That's why Maiden albums sound so clear, because they didn't use analog, where you're fighting against noise all the time and hiss of tape. And these 2 machines went out of sync, and then you had to get the engineers in. They had to redo a lot of reset the machines. So that was another thing, which that wasn't in any interviews or things like that. They just assumed that we were lazy, but there was a lot of technical problems as well.
Mm-hmm. Although you were fresh to the band, you were chosen to speak about the album to the press together with Dave Murray. How did it go? I think that you weren't satisfied by that. And why didn't Steve Harris go and talk to the press? Did he want you to speak as the new guy?
It was an absolutely practical thing. I was the new guy in the band. Everybody wanted to talk to me. Dave was a voice of experience. Steve was still in the studio mixing the album. We took 2 or 3 finished mixes with us to play to journalists, but Steve was still mixing the album, so there's no way that he could be involved in a press tour. And that was 6 weeks of fly here, interviews all day, fly there, interviews all day. And that's what it was, man, for 6 weeks. And it's one of the toughest things. And Dave Murray turned to me and said, "This is the toughest thing I've ever done in Iron Maiden." And he was on the World Slavery Tour, so it must have been tough. That was it, man. It was just very, very intense. But most of the people that listened to those songs, one of them being Sign of the Cross, had a very positive reaction towards the album.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you were given a fair amount of time to rehearse with the band before going on tour?
I think there was enough time, Yeah, I think I've got no complaints. I did my best with what I had. That's it. I made a couple of mistakes where we did have one gap where actually I could have learned. There was a guitar school near where I lived at that time, and I could have learned basic guitar. There was enough time to do that, which I think would have helped me a little bit with my writing and communicating ideas. But I think that's the only thing, really. I can't complain.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you got the attention a new singer required before or while on tour?
Well, I think everybody did their best.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you.
Bruce had a different style to what I had, and I wanted to be at the front. I didn't want to be running around the stage or up the back. I wanted to be at the front, leading the band from the front, getting as close to the fans as I possibly could. That was my style.
Let me put it the other way. During the X Factor, you had to sing many Bruce Dickinson songs. Everybody understands that that's what the fans want to hear. Okay, but it's obvious that you were more comfortable with the Paul Di'Anno songs. So you had the chance to sing less Dickinson songs and more of the first two albums and the X Factor songs. But this didn't happen, and sometimes I wonder now, 25 years later, why they picked you so that they had you sing the Bruce Dickinson songs, with some of which you were not comfortable with. It's another voice. It's something totally different. Did it feel like a torture, being on stage and having to sing every night "Hallowed Be Thy Name"?
No, man, it's one of the most wonderful songs
Okay.
ever written in the world.
Yeah, but you know that all the fans would be.
That's not just a heavy metal song. That's a great song, and The Trooper is an amazing song, and Fear of the Dark is an amazing song. So to be the voice in that song is the most, for me, incredible feeling to sing. You take my life, but I'll take yours too. It's incredible, man. As I'm waiting in my cold cell, the bell begins to toll. It's incredible. Fear of the dark. Fear of the dark. So it's just a fantastic feeling, you know. As close as you can get to real joy. We had a couple of notes that were in difficult places that didn't sound convincing on the clairvoyant, and we just changed those and sang them in a different way. And I think, you know, you're a different singer with a different style. You can kind of get away with that, and I don't think it really spoilt it for anybody. But one of the things that I wanted to do was the familiarity that Bruce had from singing those songs so many times. I wanted to try and get closer to the album versions, so that when fans came to hear my version of The Trooper, my version of Hallowed Be Thy Name, they were hearing something fresh, an excitement about the songs that probably Bruce had before he sang them 1,000 times, you know. So that's what I tried to do each night. I would try absolutely to bring out the consonants, to get the timing right, so that when people heard those songs, that they would, I hope, go, wow, that sounds a lot closer to the album, you know. So that was it for me. I wanted to do the best for every song that I could. I worked on them, and, you know, just did the best I could.
"1995, however, wasn't the best year. Wasn't the best time for heavy metal music, and eventually the sales were weaker. The album didn't chart well. You played in the US with some smaller venues. Did you feel kind of responsible for that, even though you knew you were not responsible for the album not charting well? But did you feel being part of a problem?
That's a business thing. What's missing from the picture that you describe is that Maiden changed labels, which is the curse for every band. If you change labels, you know, if that new label isn't absolutely 100% fired up, that was one of the huge problems, is that they Maiden changed from Capitol Records in the US. So really, for me, I loved singing those songs and being a part of it so much. I didn't care where we played. You know, I played thousands, 60,000 people, and I think the smallest gig we did was 500. and each one was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I really think that your voice is better in some more speedy songs, like "Man on the Edge." And from this standpoint, hearing songs like "I Live My Way," "Justice of the Peace," and "Judgment Day," another title with the word "judgment" that was on the X Factor. Don't know what if it means something. All three songs left as B-sides, and they are all speedier songs. Why were they left as B-side? Did you think that they were weaker than the other songs that appeared on the album?
No, it was just run out of time. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the album could only be a certain length, and if you want to mix all of these songs, then you've got to have a double out. So how I understood it, but obviously you'd have to ask Steve Harrison, Rod Smallwood. As I understood it, there was just no time, but we still wanted these songs. They were never written as B-sides. One of the things that Maiden do is they'll do a cover, but they won't write a song and go, oh, this is good enough for a B-side. Every song has to be great. It has the same amount of passion in it. But those songs were just, right, we've got enough for the album. And it's like, well, we would still like people to hear this. Why don't we use them in this way?
Mm-hmm. The choice of having "Sign of the Cross" as an opener of the album was really something totally different than in the past.
Well,
Who had this idea?
About it, and I said, every Maiden album opens with this, and it's a new singer, it's a new era. Why don't we shake things up? And if you started with "Sign of the Cross," it would be something totally different for fans. They would have to listen, and the first time they hear my voice, they hear it doing something unusual. And I told that to Steve, spoke about it, and then they decided to go ahead with that idea. I don't know if it was the right decision. I don't know. I'll leave it to the fans to decide.
Yeah, but it's totally different, and it's a trip. It shows that something different has been done in the band, even if they didn't know that the Iron Maiden had a new singer. By listening to this song, they say, "Oh, wow, something's happening here." And you also covered "My Generation" by Who and "Doctor by UFO as B-sides. Do you think that these songs fit your voice well? Did you enjoy recording them?
Naturally, I'm not a heavy metal singer. I love metal. I love it. That's why I'm a heavy metal singer. But naturally, my voice is rock. It's more in the style of Phil Mogg, John Bon Jovi, David Coverdale. It's more in that style than it is in the style of Rob Halford. So, that's naturally where I am. So those songs did feel really good. But I am a heavy metal singer. I love heavy metal, and that's why I choose to express myself using the medium of heavy metal for my art.
During the mid-90s, we said that classic metal was not at its peak. Iron Maiden and Judas Priest had changed their iconic frontmen. You have worked with Tim Ripper Owens, and have you discussed about these times that you were the replacements of the two biggest heavy metal singers? And how did you see that happy coincidence for you? I mean, it was a life changer singing for Iron Maiden and Judas Priest respectively. And do you want to forget? Is it something that you want to forget during your tenure with Iron Maiden?
No, man. I mean, it's glorious. The problem is for Paul Di'Anno and Bruce Dickinson, they didn't know what I knew and a lot of fans know. That is, every hardcore fan knows every previous member of Iron Maiden and will always consider them as an ex-member of Maiden, no matter what they do. For me, I went in knowing that. And for me, it wasn't a problem because I'm such a fan of Iron Maiden that if you come to me and say, oh, ex-Iron Maiden, I'll go, yeah, it was me. 2 albums, 5 years, top 10 hits, million sellers, #1 single in the rock charts around the world. Yeah, that's me. That's me with Iron Maiden. I'm absolutely 100% proud of what we did, the music that we did, the shows we did, the things that we got through. 100%. For Paul and for Bruce, when people came up to them after and said, ex-Iron Maiden, it's a problem. For me, people come up to me and say, ex-Iron Maiden. I'm like, yeah, I am. I was chosen to be the voice of what I consider to be the greatest heavy metal band of all time. And in music, forget heavy metal and genres, in music, one of the greatest bands ever, with Led Zeppelin and The Who. One of the absolute greats, Iron Maiden. So for me, I'm 100% proud of that. But for those poor guys in the situation they were in, leaving Maiden, man, that was tough for them. Not so much for me. I'm just, well, yeah, that's a part of who I am. And that's it. And people say, oh, you don't need to talk about your Iron Maiden past. And I go, well, why wouldn't I talk about something that is such a huge influence on my style? It's 25 years ago. I've got 11 studio albums. We've done another 3 Wolfsbane records as well. It's a small part of my career and what I've done, but the influence of it is huge. You listen to my War Within Me album and you can go, he's got that from when he was in Maiden. He's done that because that's what he did when he was in Maiden. And it's a different thing. So I'm proud of it. Absolutely. And
history has been written.
There are people that hate me. They hated me back then. They still hate me. And the difference is they know my name. I don't know them and I don't care.
Yeah. History has been written, Blaze. And you can't change, nobody can change it. You have been the lead singer of perhaps the best heavy metal band in the world ever.
And I wrote a top 10.
Let's see what.
You can't take that away. It's a fact.
Yeah.
I wrote Man on the Edge with Yannick Gers.
Whether you like it or not. Whether one likes it or not. Tell me for the end, your 3 best songs of the album.
Of the X Factor? Well, Judgment of Heaven.
Factor, yeah.
Judgment of Heaven. I've done that with Thomas Fyson, with the classical guitar. I've done it with my unplugged set. I've done it in my full metal set. So Judgment of Heaven, very, very special, unusual arrangement, the way that it tells the story, how the chorus comes, very unusual, the shape of the verses, but just wonderful to sing and to experience the reaction of fans to Judgment of Heaven is incredible. Of course, Man on the Edge, absolutely huge for me, and the confidence that I got from doing Man on the Edge with Maiden is one of the things that sustained me in the wilderness and in the dark years after Maiden, when I didn't have a hit, when my records didn't sell and all of that, that I'll get, well, one of my songs was a top 10 hit, was chosen to be on an Iron Maiden album, was chosen to be a single. So the reason I haven't sold any albums is not because I can't write a good song. It's not my fault. So that sustained me. Well, I did this, and that, you know, and the confidence that Steve Harris had in my ideas as well. So I think those two are very, very important. And then it's very difficult to choose between Sign of the Cross and Lord of the Flies. Very difficult, because they both, I mean, Sign of the Cross is so majestic, and the instrumental part is such a journey that you've set up, that there's gonna be some kind of storm and hell that this guy is gonna go through, and that instrumental takes you there. On Lord of the Flies, the way that it starts, the way that it builds up, the way that the guitars are, I open my anniversary set with Lord of the Flies. It's just my version of it. I do a few O's at the beginning. Whoa, oh, and it's just great, man. The way that that song flows, it's incredible.
Thank you very much for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It was a really cool experience listening to you speak with such passion about the X Factor. I really loved it.
Okay, great. Well, thanks to all of my fans and the Iron Maiden fans in Greece for supporting me. And I look forward to coming to Greece next year with the War Within Me tour.